Sure. So, uh, well, first off, um, this is basically a pseudo campaign setting that Maddie has created in order to sort of go through the process of character creation and writing adventures and stories for new players and DMs. So it's a custom setting called Mesotopia. It is not published by anyone. It's just something he's come up with. And Lukuna is one of the countries in this world. And he's kind of given me some free reign in deciding how to base an adventure in it because he wants to see my process of what it's like to design and build a campaign. So this campaign is also a pseudo campaign. However, like I said before, I am going to be putting my notes up so that people can expand on it and run it as a game if they wish. That's my end goal. I want this to be a document that anyone can pick up and run games in Lukuna if they wish.
And really, a lot of the concepts I think you used can be extended outside of Lukuna.
Oh
If I recall
yes.
correctly, Suchu wants to start her own campaign with some friends and family, and she can take the concepts you've used and tweak them or modify them as necessary for the content that she wants.
Well, yeah, this was another thing I was going to get into by saying the way I designed it for Lacuna is different than I would do it if I was given a blank slate. Like if I'm staring at a blank page and writing a campaign, it's a little different than if I have the points that you gave me for setting up my own adventure in a pre-existing place.
Hmm. Mr.
Uh,
Plunderloot is also saying also Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition hype.
yes.
That is very true. I got that advanced solicitation email that I decided to spam the chat with. I might actually end up doing something like make a game news channel and post up different solicitations I get so you all can see what's on the horizon. But that's another discussion for another time. What would you like me to bring up on screen? Right now I have the map and I have the regional breakdown. But if we're going to get into the campaign that you have plotted for Lacuna, which document would you like me to open here? The one that is titled The Country of Lacuna?
Um, well, actually, it's good to start with the overview of Mesotopia as a whole, because I believe that was the first document you sent me. So it's the point I started with. So I'm going to be
Oh,
talking
okay.
a little bit about that. Um,
I do not have that one open. I'm sorry, because I only opened up the Lacuna ones. Give me
oh, okay,
one
then go
second
back to
here.
the overview of the regions. That's the closest we can get.
Give me one second here, and I'll make sure that this can. I'll have this opened up.
Yeah, that's okay.
D&D stuff. Dun, dun, dun. I want to make sure I'm opening up the map also for Mesotopia as a whole. There we go.
Oh,
There's that. I'll show back up in a minute here. I don't want a bunch of things flashing around on screen and being all confusing or whatnot as I'm shuffling through the files to bring up. So I have the Mesotopia map, and we're looking for the description of that region.
yeah.
Musica. Da, da, da. Here we go. Okay. All right, so I have the map and I have the overall explanation. Was there anything else you want me to open up while I have this D&D stuff going?
No.
Okay.
Fine.
All right, now let me... I'm going to declutter the desktop here real quick. Let's get this down. There's Mesotopia. There we go. All right, now I think I have everything here. Let's come back to it. All right, I got rid of a lot of the stuff going on in the background. That way we can focus more on what we're directly talking about. To answer real quick Suchu's question, when did we start this? This happened, about 2 months ago, when we're still doing the process of making a weekly campaign, and a party came up that turned out to be neutral at best, evil at worst in alignment. There was nobody who was good, and it turned out to be a party full of spies, charlatans, and others. And so it built for a very good politicking game, you know, intrigue and spying and espionage and all of that. And so instead of making one region or one town for a location for an adventure, we made a map and split it up into 6 different countries, as a spy campaign would necessitate, you know, going between different governments, making deals and all this. So instead of one location, we made several. And after that, every week we focused on one part of this region of Mesotopia and brought it to life by a campaign. And now we are actually doing the last part of Mesotopia as a singular campaign. I hope that answers your question, Suchu. But okay, here is the entire region of Mesotopia as we initially created it. And we have our 6 countries here. We have Kandor in the upper left, Aslandia, which is everything else in the north. We have the Fallfire Plains here in the central western region. We have Ukt in the lower right, or in the southeast here. And this was the horror-themed campaign that Macabre Derek assembled. Then this little island over here that looks like a plague doctor's mask is called Mesomasca, and this was the first campaign that we did outside of the introductory one. And now, lastly but certainly not leastly, we have Lukuna down here in the southwest, which does include this the volcanic archipelago going on in the middle of the sea here. And so I have Mesotopia here on the Astragon Sea. We can go over whatever you'd like now.
All right. Well, the reason this document is important is because it outlines the 6 things that are true for Lukuna that I wanted to bring into my campaign. So the races, the ruler status, notable traits, and so forth. And what I did to expand on them is basically I like asking questions to develop some details usually. So something like the racial minority are refugees. So we take a look. The majority of them are rock gnomes, and the minority of them are Lightfoot halfling. So if the racial minority are refugees, that means Lukuna is basically a rock gnome country that has accepted Lightfoot halflings as given them asylum or refugee status from someplace.
Mm-hmm.
So where is that place? So I looked through the 6 places. And the only other place that has halflings is the Fallfire Plains. And there's also the option to have them be fleeing from the Empire. which
Yes.
is something a little further down in the document. But I didn't want to get into that because it wasn't quite as fleshed out as the rest of the country, and so I figured for a level 1 to 4 thing, the Empire should probably its influence should probably be around, but it should probably not be a theme yet for the beginning of our campaign. So I decided that Fallfire Plains was a good option, especially because it's also a war going on. So
Oh, yes.
wars create refugees who are fleeing the the problems. And that was basically all the information I pulled off to this document. Well, no, I pulled all the 6 points, but the details I pulled were the Fallfire Plain and the refugee status.
Well, to pause real quick, Tin Cat, welcome. Fan, hello to you. Rowmonger, it's good to see you again. It's been a little while. I was getting a little worried something might have happened to you. And Bubonic One just showed up too. For those of you who are new here, Ivellos is going over how he constructed a campaign set in the Lukuna country of the Mesotopia region. And we'll be going into his strategy, because his approach, I present in my own way, but the way that I run D&D certainly is not the only kind. And so Ivellos was kind enough to step up and put in a lot of work to make this portion of the map come more alive.
Yes, and so now if you switch to the document I sent you, the Lukuna campaign document, you can see basically what I just explained is what I wrote in as the first sentence in the document.
Okay, so I'm going to switch also over to... Oh, there's our cloud giant. We're having a little fun with the shapes of the clouds in the sky here. There we go.
That's okay.
All right, so here's our map of Lukuna itself, and it's an expanded map. I'm going to reduce this down so we're still getting to see your document.
I still wish you would have at least put numbers on the map so that they would correspond to the regions.
I understand. Over the course of it, that was unfortunately something that I did not get to do. So,
right.
We'll make do. If you want to throw that out there as a footnote, then that's very fair.
So also for people who didn't know how I was pronouncing it or how to spell it, it's the country of Lukuna there. I give a pronunciation guide for how I would pronounce it, because fantasy words are weird.
Yes.
And so I just took that information I just rambled about from that page, and I wrote, the racial minority of Lukuna are Lightfoot halfling refugees from the war-torn region of Fallfire Plains. And then I took your rock gnomes and Lightfoot halflings, and I thought, well, what does that mean, right, for the dungeon master who's going to run this? I wanted to give it its own flavor because it's primarily a rock gnome country. So I wanted it to feel different. I didn't want them to feel like, short humans.
Right, right.
So what I like to do when I build characters, and I guess this also works for DMing, especially if it's in a custom place where the lore of the creatures is not fleshed out yet, is if you turn in the player's handbook. I'm kind of bringing you on a really fast tour here.
Yep.
But if you turn to Gnome in the player's handbook on page 35, you will see there are these headings above all of the flavor text descriptions. And the flavor text descriptions go into more detail about what it means. But these headings are basically what makes a gnome.
So we're looking at things like vibrant expression, delighted dedication,
Yeah.
bright burrows, and such.
Yeah, so these are things that highlight kind of what it means to be a gnome. So I copied them into the document as bullet points, as sort of like personality traits for the DM to run gnomes. And I added one, you'll note, I added it in highlight because one of the 6 points you made was that Lukuna is known for its greedy merchants.
Yes.
And if we had decided that the rock gnomes are the majority race and the Lightfoot halflings are refugees, it means probably the greedy merchants are all rock gnome. So Lukuna is known for its greedy gnome merchants. So that's kind of like the flavor way to play a rock gnome. And it uses the player's handbook. Now, if you turn to the Dungeon Master's Guide, there's a statistical way to make them feel like rock gnomes as well. So you can have it both mechanically and flavor, your crunch and your fluff, right? So on page 282 of the Dungeon Master Guide, they give you a table of NPC features that you can use to make any humanoid NPC feel more like a race.
You said it was 282?
Yeah.
I'm going to scroll to that real quick here.
Okay.
Might have just passed it. 1 second. 278, 9, 80, 81, and 82 is NPC features.
Yes.
All right.
So a lot of beginning dungeon masters will create NPCs through character creation in the player's handbook because that's what they know. They've probably been players first. But I find that to be a headache. Create every NPC with that kind of style. So if you we can take an example here. If you look in the back of the monster manual at the non-player characters section, pick any of the non-player characters you want.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Oh, in the back of the monster manual,
Okay.
Appendix B, non-player characters, pick any of them you want.
Sure. Let's go to...
Oh, and yes, I can answer questions people have.
Let's do a guard. Guards are kind of ubiquitous. You know, everyone seems to have a stereotype of a town guard. Let's do something with guards, since that's a very well-known concept.
So if you look at the guard stat as it's presented in the monster manual, it's actually a human. It says medium humanoid any race, but it's basically been statted out to be a human. So if you want the guard to mechanically feel like a rock gnome, I wrote down a description there of what rock gnome NPCs get in my document. So you would take the guard's intelligence, increase it by 2, constitution gets increased by 1, and it gets gnome cunning. You change it to a small humanoid, you reduce its speed to 25 feet, give it dark vision, and it speaks common and gnomish. Usually guards only speak one language because they're human, but we replace it because it's a rock gnome. And so this tells us a few different things about the guard. It can see in the dark, and it is small, and it is resistant to magic, as opposed to the regular human guard, who is none of these things.
So with that concept in mind, if we take what you've prepared here, we can add these features. If we want to make then a Lightfoot Halfling Knight, and we're looking at the Knight entry down here. We use what the monster manual is providing us, and we add the statistics that you've provided and the abilities.
Yes, well, that I provide. It's really the Dungeon Master guide that provides it, but I just copied it in for quick reference. But yes, that is how you would change it. And of course, Lightfoot Halflings are not rock gnomes, even though they're still short humanoids. So their traits are there as well to show how different they are from the rock gnome NPCs, if you're running them, how their personality is a little different.
And Deathcount had asked a question, do you keep the stat boosts the human gives?
Well, like I said, I believe that all of these non-player characters are statted out as humans, so you don't adjust them for being humans. And the reason I believe that is mainly because in the NPC features table in the Dungeon Master's Guide, there is no human entry for how to adjust the stats of an NPC. So I believe that's because they are all already adjusted for being humans.
But we wouldn't have to subtract 1 from all their ability scores before adding +2 Dex and +1 Charisma for a Lightfoot.
No.
Okay.
No, nothing like that. You just take it. It's a template, and you just shove it on. It's easy. It's quick. I find it much easier for creating random NPCs than making class race player character creation.
Excellent. And so while you do have to consult 2 different books, it looks like a lot of the work is done for you, and you just get to pineapple pen whatever combination you want.
Yeah, pretty much.
Excellent.
So these are the races that you have provided, and this is my take on them. Also, depending on how deep the Dungeon Master wants to get into the lore, you can play around with this information that you have already, right? So rock gnomes and Lightfoot Halflings are small, right?
Mm-hmm.
So buildings in Lukuna are probably small as well. A medium-sized creature will probably have trouble moving indoors. It might be difficult terrain for them. They might have a disadvantage on some movement checks like acrobatics or athletics to move indoors. You don't have to do it, but that's something that could definitely come up. Maybe the gnomes, because they can see in the dark, don't have, light sources at night. But the halfling residences do. So that's a interesting way to tell who is who as well. And also the gnomes, if they don't want the halflings to know what's going on, they can speak in gnomish. And vice versa. So there can be a little racial tension there. You want to play that up. You don't have to, again.
Bubonic is saying offer human-sized dwellings in human-designated areas. And Dorgrim observed, it seems that they are only assumed to be human, but don't have any of the human traits. And Dorgrim, you're probably talking about the NPCs here in the back of the monster manual.
Yeah.
And it does appear that that is the case. So that's how you can combine the NPCs in the back of the monster manual, and then you can throw on the NPC features here in the DMG.
Yeah.
Okay. So looking then at what we had here for rock gnomes in terms of their mechanics, and we even had a cultural consideration of, look, a vaulted ceiling for us, if your house has a 10 or a 12-foot ceiling, or even an 8-foot, that's normal. So if you walk into a halfling or a gnome building, they might have a vaulted ceiling of maybe 6 to 8 feet. So it could be cramped for a lot of medium-sized adventures. And so as you're building a world then, and it sounds like you took this consideration, Ivelon, as you were building it, you thought, well, if everyone here lived this certain way, or they lived in this region with access to whatever resources, or they only grew so big, or this would have been a completely different place if it was full of dragonborns and half-orcs like Kandor.
Yes. The
Now,
race
speaking
should...
of dragons, you do have an entry here for chromatic dragons and metallic dragons.
Yes, and I'll get to that in a second. I just wanted to say, just like when I create characters, I want the races to feel different and magical because it's a fantasy world. The race should lend some flavor to the story somehow.
Yeah, you don't want them to be small humans, like you said.
Yeah. Another way is they are very long-lived, which we can see in our party. There's a bunch of
Yes.
halflings there. I
Yeah,
don't
the
think we have
halflings do a very good
gnomes,
job of showcasing that.
but both gnomes and halflings live for hundreds of years. So they're a very long-lived race. So they will build things that last because they don't want to be buying a pair of shoes every 10 years when you live for 200 years, right? That's a lot of wasted money, especially for greedy gnome merchants.
Ah, yes.
So that's also something to take into consideration. Their goods are of higher quality than a human merchant would provide.
So while the merchants are greedy, that doesn't mean that they make shoddy work.
No.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So the other thing to take into consideration for races were dragons for me. Because one of the things that was true about Lukuna from the overview was that a powerful wizard had moved into town.
Ah, yes.
And we are going to turn back to the Dungeon Master's Guide and take a look at Chapter 4, I believe it is.
Okay.
Is it Chapter 4? Creating non-player characters. Yeah. So this is also a good way to flesh out a non-player character, right? You don't have to give them a background from the player's handbook. You can use this chapter. And so what I did was, because this wizard is the Calamity, I just decided, let's make him the big bad evil guy of the campaign, right? Calamity should be in some way some obstacle the adventurers have to deal with. So I used this chapter, basically, to flesh him out. And if you look under the detailed NPCs heading, you can see in bullet point form basically the things the chapter goes through, you know, their occupation and history, their appearance, abilities, etc.
And this is getting into some great depth. And for as much as we randomly generate player characters on this stream, you can randomly generate, if you wanted to, or just use the tables as a guideline. You can take a lot of information away from this book.
Yes, the DMG is a great resource for dungeon masters who want to get into the nitty-gritty of building things. So if you scroll down in my document now, you have to scroll down a lot.
Okay.
Scroll down to page 8. Because you can see sort of here are the things I had started filling out for the bullet points.
Okay.
Of him. But I also decided that this Calamity lends itself well to an event-based adventure. Like, the whole campaign is event-based on this wizard moving into Lukuna and what hijinks will ensue. So that is on Chapter 5 of the DMG. And in this chapter, there are different types of adventures and stuff. I won't get into it too much right now.
Okay.
Suffice to say, for an event-based adventure, you need oh no, that's adventure environments. Hang on a sec. Wrong chapter. It is chapter 3, creating adventures.
Ah, okay. Well, just a step in the other direction.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah, we won't get into this too much right now. Suffice it to say that event-based adventures require a villain. Step 1, on page 75, is to start with a villain. So this is our villain, the powerful wizard. So who is the villain? Right? So
Okay.
there is a table on page 74 called Adventure Villains. So I rolled on it, and I got a dragon bent on domination and plunder.
All right. Oh, number
So
4. Okay.
yeah. So dragons are going to be important in Lukuna because there is one, and I wanted the DM, especially if it's a new time DM, to know the difference between their dragon. Because what type of dragon you encounter can influence, you know, what how you survive or not. So the chromatic dragons are the 5 colored dragons who have these traits, and the metallic dragons are the 5 metal-based dragons that have those traits.
Okay, so I'm scrolling back up. We're on 1, and now we're referencing your blurbs on chromatic and metallics.
Yes.
And you did this because you are writing this for. I know I'm going to be repetitive here, but if we're getting new people watching, just so that they can get a quick catch up on what's happening, you've written this adventure for it's a level 1 to 4 adventure or a campaign, and these are
At the
notes
moment.
that you put out there so that they don't have to spend the time flipping through the book like you did. It's there for easy for reference.
Yes, especially since there are going to be random encounters with dragons as a possibility in the wilderness. I have not really fleshed out the wilderness part yet. That's one of the things I still have to add to it when I put it in the rules workshop. But dragons are a thing in Lukuna. Like, there are dragon nests. Because another thing you said that was true about Lukuna was that there is a canyon containing a dragon's graveyard.
Yes.
So dragons go to Lukuna to die. So this is something that's going to come up often in adventures in Lukuna. So I figured the Dungeon Master should have this easy reference for knowing types of dragon.
All right.
Oh, did you have a question about Tiamat? I just saw chat.
Well, Mantarok just asked Tiamat, and so I was while you were presenting, I wanted to see if what was the question about Tiamat.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. You just heard chromatic. Got it. Okay.
Yes. So the other thing I do is, because our dragon is also a powerful wizard, because I'm not replacing what you said was true, I'm just adding to it.
Correct.
I took the variant from the monster manual, dragons as innate spellcast. I can find the page for you in a sec. It's on page 86. And it also has a chart on page 86 of the age categories of a dragon. Right?
And this is in the monster manual?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, it's
I'm
in
going
the
to it
monster
right now.
manual. But it's also the thing I copied down onto my document. Basically, it gives dragons the ability to cast spells, certain number of spells once per day, and they require no material components. The reason they can cast them is because of dragons. And I
That's all
like
you
that.
really need.
Yeah. I am also kind of writing into the adventure something that doesn't exist, but I feel is thematically important. The shrewd um, reader, I guess, will see that metallic dragons have this solitary shapeshifters trait, and chromatic dragons do not.
Yes.
I'm giving the powerful wizard dragon who's bent on corruption or destruction the ability to shapeshift, and he is a chromatic dragon. So that's something I've decided to do because uh, for multiple reasons, really. One is that he has come to Lukuna in the guise of a powerful spellcaster, a powerful wizard,
Mm-hmm.
and also because I didn't want the party to have to face a young red dragon at first level. So they're going to meet him, we'll see later, but they won't meet him in his true form until the level 5 to 10 campaign, which again is not written quite yet. All right. I think that's it for the races. Does anyone have questions?
Yep. Did any of you out there, even Dark Wolf, because you are a new and up and coming dungeon master yourself, did you or anyone else have questions on where this information came from, how it works together, or where he came up with the ideas that he has produced so far? Bubonic apparently thinks that there's too many people who are focused on Bahamut and maybe not enough followers of Tiamat.
I don't know.
I don't think that was necessarily a campaign critique, but I mean, like you hear the name Bahamut used way more often than Tiamat.
I
Mantarok's enjoying the
suppose
conversation.
so.
That's perfectly fine, Mantarok. You are allowed sip your tea. That is a very cute emote, by the way.
Yeah, that anime girl is good. She also has these emotes.
Ah.
Pretty cute. But yeah, these are the race things, and that's page 1. I'm really happy. My OCD is happy that I got all of that on one page.
Yeah. Suchu, how did he come up with the ideas? Ultimately, everything was randomly rolled, and it's just a matter of procedure after that. That's a very quick way of saying it.
Yes, everything on the first page, except for the fact that the Lightfoot Halflings are from the Fallfire Plains, and that the Rock Gnomes are greedy merchants. Everything else on the page was copied from the books. So
And
the Fallfire
ultimately, you can
Plains
argue
and
that
greedy,
that was randomly generated as well.
yeah,
As
that
we
was
were
from
developing
you.
the region, these were all results off of a D20 chart inside the
Yeah,
DMG.
yeah. So all of this was nothing I came up with myself. What I come up with myself are the connection, right? Just by looking, you can see rock gnomes and Lightfoot halflings are small size. What does that mean for a world? We know what it means in the rules, but what does it mean in the game world, right?
It's thinking, it's taking that one next step into the margin of what's presented to you.
That's also kind of why I didn't detail out the entire culture, because I want to leave it up to the GM who picks up this sheet how deep they want to go. Because you could just run it regularly and not go deep into, culture and politics and stuff. But these are the things I think you should keep in mind, whether or not you flush them out on your own. Oh yeah, and another caveat is that not every Lightfoot Halfling NPC has to have all 5 traits, right? You could do one that has 1 or 2
Mm-hmm.
as well and just play that one up. Like, just make a kind and curious halfling. He's just, you know, he just wants to know stuff, and he's nice to people. And that's enough for a background NPC.
Now, moving away from that, we have Macalar here. This is the beginning of the campaign?
Yes. So just before that is the ruler status. And the ruler is the person, not the person in charge of Lukuna, because you'll see when I describe McKellar what it's like, but they are sort of like a chairperson, or you know, the person who's directs the meeting, right? So you wrote that, well, you rolled, not wrote, that the ruler is respected, fair, and just. So I just fleshed that out a little bit, and I gave it the twist that he has sanctioned privateers to attack and plunder the Shadowhar Empire vessel to help increase the wealth of Puna. And that's how I wrote in your outside force empire thing here now.
That makes sense. It's a good way to tease the idea without having to go into direct conflict.
Yes. It also allows for pirate NPCs to show up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
If you so wish. So yeah, so after that, I did try to stat her out, but I had multiple problems with it. And then I decided that for levels 1 to 4, which is going to be the first arc, it's probably unlikely that they are going to be in Lukuna City, which is where Tana, I don't want to say rules from, she's not like a monarch, but it's where she governs, where the ruling council government of Lukuna meets. It's almost like a UN type situation.
Okay.
So I decided just to not stat her out now and worry about it later in the life of the document. So we're now going to get into the notable traits, which I decided would be used here for the points, the towns and villages and dungeons and wilderness of Lukuna. But before we go straight into the first town, I want to direct you to page 15 of the player's handbook.
Okay.
It is probably most well known as the page of the character advancement table, where you get to see what experience points you get per level and what your proficiency bonus is at that level. But what dungeon masters can use is the idea of the tiers of play. And the idea here is that basically every time, or close to every time, your proficiency bonus changes, that is a new story arc. And you can see them highlighted in the different colors, right? So the green 1 to 4 is the first story arc, and the non-highlighted portion 5 to 10.
Oh, I'm doing a bad job at highlighting. Yeah, but that
second one.
The book is doing it better.
And yeah, 11 to 16 is third, and 17 to 20 is the fourth. And above that, in paragraphs, they describe, you know, what happened. So we're just going to do the first tier now, because that's all I started with right now. So in the first tier, levels 1 to 4, characters are effectively apprentice adventurers. They're getting their feet wet. They're learning the features that define them as members of particular classes, including the major choices that flavor their class. Features as they advance, such as the wizard's arcane tradition or fighter's martial archetype. The threats that they face are relatively minor, usually posing a danger to local farmsteads or villages. So that's kind of the theme of the 1 to 4 story arc.
Real quick, Mantrock had asked a question.
Oh,
Has there been instances of mind flayers being socialized, well, sociable to humanoids outside their species? Would you like to field that?
you in Lukuna or in general?
I'm presuming in general because he said it's a bit of a random question.
Okay, I would say it depends on the campaign setting, but there are ways to build Mind Flayer NPCs who are on the surface and interact with other races without being, raw, I'm gonna eat your brain.
Because they do carry themselves as civilized. They just have a different set of morals and values.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
fact, if I recall correctly from a YouTube video about Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes coming out, Mind Flayers are responsible for creating the Duragar because they kidnapped a bunch of dwarves from underneath a mountain somewhere and used a bunch of psionic powers on them to, uh, well, I don't know if I'd call it socialize, but there was contact made, and now the Duragar had broken free and they're their own thing.
Yes. So, in the DMG, there is a little bit more about tiers. I'll
Okay.
just see if I can find it. I think it's 72. No, not quite. Uh, Here.
Well, you're finding that if you all were following along, Ivalon chose to make this campaign levels 1 to 4 because he wanted to focus on this style of play at this tier of levels.
Yes. So also my theory about that is it's really it's a good guide because you can sort of write it so that the climax happens at level 4, right? That's when you finish the first story arc and basically you come into your own. Everyone has all of their class archetypes and stuff. And that's when the world should shift and people should know, at least in the local region, where the stuff you fixed happens. They should know your party by then because you've
By level 4, you're the big fish in the small pond.
yeah. And so that's also when the new arc starts and there's a new trouble, and this trouble might be for the whole kingdom of Lukuna instead of just the region you're in. So it's kind of like an escalating thing. Hmm.
Okay, and is Macklemore then going to be their starting city? Where the party, by whatever means, have come together, and this is where our story opens?
Yes, Macklemore is going to be what is called the home base in the Dungeon Master's Guide. It is the place where they can get resources, where they can rest. Um, you'll notice under commerce, we'll jump ahead to commerce. It basically says what I said. Basic supplies you can buy. Inns and taverns will support you. I also added, because of their greedy merchant trait, that everything costs 50% more to buy, 50% less to sell than the prices in the player's handbook. And it's called the Electrum tax because 50% of a gold piece is an Electrum.
Yep.
And not a lot of people use that coin, so I wanted to just throw it in there for fun. Um, Tiers of Play, page 36. Found it.
Of the DMG?
Yes. It basically says the exact same things, but it gives you an easier way to look at it. It's page 36, or 37, really.
Oh, I overskipped it here.
First one starts.
There we go.
Yeah.
1 to 4 local heroes, 5 to 10 heroes of the realm, 11 to 16 masters of the realm, and 17 to 20 masters of the world.
Right. So that's kind of the escalating thing I said. Local, which is like the one region where Macklemore and the surrounding villages are. Then the realm, which is like Lukuna.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually it becomes Mesotopia as a whole. If you're going with the traditional 1 to 20, this is a good way to segment it for, again, the beginning dungeon master who might not know how to, like they're faced with levels 1 to 20, they're not sure how to break them up. This is an easy way to divide it. And they have guidelines in here for what each of that means.
Looks like Dorgrim had addressed you.
So selling equipment, the base is normally at 50% of the price listed. Are you stating it's the same, or it's supposed to be actually 25%?
I think what he's referring to, I think it's in chapter 5, in the equipment section, when it talks about buying and selling. If you're going to sell, I don't know, a breastplate costs something like 800 gold. If you were to sell it, an armor would only give you 400 gold for it under quote-unquote normal circumstances in the PHB. Here we go. Let's go up here. As a general rule, undamaged weapons, armor, and other equipment fetch half their cost when sold at market. Weapons and armor used by monsters are rarely good enough in a condition to sell.
Oh, so they're already at half market value. So half of that, yeah.
It's something to bring up, or it could also be the Electrum tax is usually a cost that is applied. If the selling is already taken care of, then that would simply indicate that the prices are raised 50%. So a dagger that costs 10 gold pieces costs 15, and that extra price is what's called the Electrum tax. You might be able to look at it that way.
Yeah, so for now, we're just going to format this with a strike through, and I'll get back to it after that. But yes, that's a good catch. I did not think about that. I'm not good with math, and I didn't know the rule that you have to sell it back for half.
And you know what? Is it staple D&D? Not necessarily. Different towns will treat you differently depending on circumstances or how much your DM really wants to get involved in things.
Yeah, so I haven't actually fleshed out the villages around McKellar because I was working hard on the dungeon and trying to get that finished.
Yeah, and where not that when I say I don't want to get into the weeds, I'm not considering this level of detail weeds, like nuisances. You are definitely doing a lot of other crunch and a lot of other things going on. And by the way, Tin Cat, thank you for the compliment, and that's a compliment to you too, Ivelon.
Thanks. And yeah, Dorgrim, no, it's yeah, no, your thing was totally legit. It was supposed to be basically the same. Basically, you cannot sell an item to a merchant in Lukuna for its price in the tables. So the fact that by default it's already, you have to sell it back at half is fine. But yes, The reason I mentioned the other villages is because they are not going to have inns and taverns and basic supplies readily available. They will basically have, like, I guess, a general store
Mm-hmm.
and maybe one tavern, but they don't really support a tourist population villages. They're there to support the towns, basically.
And when we, you learn in basic economics, if supply is low and or if demand is high, prices raise.
Right.
Okay, so we,
So,
we have our, for lack of a better term, we have our hub world, right? We have our hub town. They can come back and
yes.
heal and rest or gather information or whatnot here.
And towns are in, like, the things are in, where are they? Dungeon Master's Guide. Settlements, page 112. And I kind of, oh no, that's random settlements. That's what you use to do the things. Stuff I'm looking for is on an earlier page. Which I wanted to use to explain how I did all that typing for McKellar. So, well, we can start here with page 25 in the DMG. This is probably the one that will be most useful to Suchu and anyone else who is writing their own game.
Okay, do you want to give Suchu a tag just to make sure?
Oh, you mean at him?
Yeah, I'm
Right,
scrolling up in the
Suchu.
meantime just to make sure that you're digging people who you think might really want to pay attention.
Yeah. So I'll say it again. Page 25 of the Dungeon Master's Guide is really the best place to start if you're a new dungeon master and you want to write your own content. So the first advice is to start small and create a home base, which is what I did with McKellar, right? So earlier in this chapter, chapter 1, there is a lot of setting information, but there's, starting on page 15, there's a good overview of what settlements are and how to create them. So if you're creating a home base, there's a
Which
bunch of
page again?
15.
Oh, all right. Oh, I got to go back a little bit further.
Yeah. There's a bullet point list there for, like, if you're creating a hub and you don't really have an idea, like I had some ideas from what Maddie had given me and what I've already created in the world. But there's a bunch of questions here that you can answer if you're just starting with a blank slate and you're not sure. So, like, what purpose does the town serve? So McKellar has a specific purpose, and that purpose is that it is the headquarters for the Garrick family merchant guild, which is important for some other reasons. Its purpose is also to house refugees. There's a 20% population of halfling refugees in McKellar. The villages will probably have some, but it won't be as high because they don't really have the resources to house that many. It is also the seat of one of the ruling council of Lukuna. Uh, so how big is it? Who lives there? All right, so how big is it? I did this randomly. If you switch back to page Where is it? Oh no, sorry, go to the next page. Page 17, where it says town.
Got it.
So this is an easy way also, if you don't know how many people are supposed to be in there. It says up to about 6,000, right? So you'll notice my population is a very specific number. Oh, how did I get to that? I must be some kind of genius. No, I rolled a d6 for the first column. I got a 5, and then I rolled a d10 for the other 3. Those were the numbers I got. Right? Because a d10 is from 0 to 9. So the highest number I could have gotten was 6,999.
McLoken, thank you very much for the follow. Hopefully you're having fun enjoying this this breakdown and this lesson in how to crack open the DMG, the Monster Manual, and the PHB, and make them work in harmony as you're trying to design your own campaign.
Yeah, so then I did the race distribution, because somebody who is making a random NPC, again, we want the NPCs to feel like halflings or gnomes. How do you decide? Well, you can roll a percentile die, a d100, and because 80% of the population are rock gnomes, the result of 1 to 80 is a rock gnome. 20% are lightfoot halflings, so 81 to 100 is a lightfoot halfling. Sounds weird because 100 minus 81 is 19, but 100 is also a digit. So there's actually 20 results you can get from 81 to 100. That's something Plunder taught me. I did not know that myself.
Hang on, I'm sorry. 1 second here, Ivelon.
Oh, damn.
Journeyman is here and has come with a raiding party from Exploding Dice. A very unique icon. I like that. The grenade is the D20. Barbarian, welcome. An Exploding Dice raid. That's awesome.
Crazy.
Thank you very much for that.
Unfortunately, they don't exist in D&D, but exploding dice are very fun.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, that's they are in the games that use them there. For a while in the store, we had a 10 keep 10 competition. We had a scoreboard of whoever had the highest, and I think it was up to like 126 or something. It was crazy.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, this is a tangent story. Exploding dice basically works like, let's say in D&D, you hit maximum damage on your die, right? Exploding dice means you get to roll that again and add it. And if you hit maximum on that roll, you get to roll it again.
Yeah, so you keep going until you don't.
Yeah, until you don't roll them.
Real quick then, to catch Journeyman and the others who have come along for the raid. In fact, Ivelon, if you want to... Throck Plays, thank you for the follow. If you want to put a link up to your channel to show if people want to watch you go through the process with your VODs, or otherwise, for all of you out there, Ivelon is going through the process of being a guest DM on this channel of how he made a level 1 to 4 campaign. And he's taking us through the steps in the pages in the DMG, the PHB, and the Monster Manual in how you can easily go through and consider... where's this campaign at? How can you make these tough decisions? Or even if it's an arbitrary decision, but, look, I didn't study sociology. I didn't study population management. How can I manage these concepts? If my players ask, well, how big of a town is it? Oh, I don't know. Is 200 a lot of people in a town? Is 2,000 too much? Too little? And so he's taking us through a step-by-step process because this channel focuses on... This is D&D 101. This is community storytelling. This is the empowerment and onboarding of new role players. Yes, we do focus on Dungeons and Dragons, but Ivelon was just going into what exploding dice are, and you really don't find those in D&D. But you do in some older versions like D10 systems, 7th Sea, World of Darkness, etc. And so, if you're any kind of a role player, you have a table at our you have a chair at our table here.
Yes. Very much.
Captain J Cross and Metamancer, thank you also for the follows.
I know Metamancer, not personally, but through one of their old friends. They're pretty cool.
Genlei has followed as well as Coffee Cat Comics. Chaotix. I think that would be a Chaotix has followed as well. Thank you very much. I super appreciate that.
I mean, I could do first edition Genli AI. I have, I think, basically all of the first edition books from Drive Through RPG. I could totally teach you how to run a game in first edition, but that's not the topic of this.
Yeah.
Let's focus back on the town. So you'll see the town block there gives you like a baseline for government, defense, commerce, organization.
Yeah, and so this way, as a new DM, you don't have to feel overwhelmed. It's giving you a set of parameters in which you can play. And that's how you then populated and gave some thought to Macklemore here.
Yes, so basically I took these, and where it seemed reasonable, I changed it to fit the setting, and where it seemed reasonable, I just left it from the book. So the next page, after this page, in the DMG, has a forms of government table. So if you're unsure of what kind of government your cities should have, you can roll on a D100 on the table. Of course, because it's greedy merchant, gnome country, it's definitely a plutocracy. And I took the line from the Dungeon Master's Guide because it's a very good definition of plutocracy. Society is governed by the wealthy. So basically, you purchase your seat on the Ruin Council of this country. And Sibo Garrick Glitterhammer is the one who's purchased the seat from McKellar. And if astute readers or people who have been paying attention to me for a while, I always find amazing, will notice that Sibo shares quite a name with the ruler of Lukuna, which is why I wanted to get to that before we jumped into McKellar. So if you scroll up a tiny bit, yeah, I'm on delay here a little bit, but yes. Notice their two last names are the same. So this is a little trick I like to do because gnomes have a first name, a last name, and a nickname. So I kind of changed it for Lukuna, and I have to make a note somewhere about this, but basically the gnome names are their first name, their family name, and then the gnome clans. And the Glitterhammer clan is probably the biggest in Lukuna, so the Glitterhammer the third name Glitterhammer will be around a lot.
They're you can say that they're the gnome old boys, huh?
Yeah. And so the Garrick family has a lot of influence because the current seat in Lukuna City, I won't say they're like the ruler of all Lukuna, but the current person who has purchased the seat of Lukuna City is also from the Garrick family. So he has that kind of connection there.
Yeah, well, it'd probably be, the mayor of New York City can probably call the governor in Albany and be like, hey, I'm going to come over, free up your lunch, and the governor will be like, oh, yeah, sure, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. So, BECMI, the Rules Cyclopedia, you mean. The better version of BECMI. Right, where were we? Right. So that's what I changed from the default government, which mentions things like nobles and lord mayors, which is okay for basic stuff, but not for the flavor of Lukuna. For defense, I kept it the same, but I changed the noble to being Sibo, who's a merchant. He's just a commoner. He's not a noble. And so what you would do, again, is if you were to roleplay Sibo and some kind of fight broke out, you would use the commoner stat block or if you need to do rolls for him for skills or whatever, again, you'd use the common stat block and apply the racial traits that we discussed from page 1.
Yep.
But yeah, in the defense, I put that basically from the book, that there's an army of professional soldiers, and there's also personal bodyguards to protect him. And I made them 2 different levels. The professional soldiers are stronger because they are there to protect Mackillart basically from outside forces, although you could in a pinch use them as a policing force as well. So this brings up a point that somebody had mentioned, and I'm sorry I forgot who. Oh, those tiers I was talking about. Oh, there's tiers in every edition of D&D. They're just the levels they encompass are a little bit different in each version. But yeah, I think BECMI was the first to kind of break them out into different books. Where was I? Oh yeah, I forget who it was, and I'm sorry about that. But somebody mentioned, you know, what happens if you just kill the person who's going to give you the quest, right? Well, Mackillart is a city in a world, and there are professional soldiers, you know, that can patrol the streets to keep the peace, to make sure that nobody's, you know, stealing from the merchants or committing murders. So what you can do is, if the party tries to go all murder hobo on you and create chaos, is have a group of like 4 or 5 veterans just pop up, and you don't have to have the veterans kill them either, just knock them unconscious.
Yeah, I mean, these
jail.
are new adventurers. It should be easy for even, you know, quote unquote NPC guards to take them down. And if
Yeah,
they really want to fight in the middle of the street, I mean, there's a bunch of citizens here who have their own vested interests and will, you know, happily put down miscreants.
yeah. The personal bodyguards are a little more like mercenary. He's hired to protect himself. They're kind of different in the soldiers in that they're kind of like secret service. They're just concerned about protecting Sibo, but unlike the secret service, they're not as well trained as the professional soldiers, because that would require giving them more money than he gives the soldiers, and that would cause, you know, internal strife and whatever. So that's how I justified giving him guards and giving the town itself veteran. And again, you'll notice here that unlike Sibo, who I specified as a gnome, because gnomes are majority race, so it makes sense for most of their ruling council to be gnomes, the guards and veterans do not have a specified race.
Yes.
Which means you could apply the population statistics to deciding if they're rock gnomes or lightfoot halflings, or maybe something else. It's up to the DM. They are in service. They are being paid by Sibo, but they don't have to necessarily be citizens of Mackillart.
And what you're talking about is it is good to consider, though. This is for a beginner DM. I want to make sure that we're, you know, like we're hitting the obvious things first, but you can see as you know, Suchu or Darkwolf or any other beginner DMs out there, you can put in a lot of supporting thought, or even if you go that one next step, you know, why are you describing that there are people walking around in purple uniforms and people walking around in green uniforms? You know, that's the difference between the bodyguards and the police, or the veterans and the guards, and that kind of a thing.
Yeah, the main thing is I wanted them to feel different. So for the new DM who picks it up, it's one sentence description of the defense of Mackillart. It gives them 2 different versions of defenders, basically. People that will come to Mackellar's defense or Sibo's defense. And then we've already gone through commerce. which again is every one of these dots can be different. Like maybe a village is not part of the autocracy, right? Because towns or cities might be the ones who purchase seats on the ruling council, but maybe villages have a more progressive, maybe one of the villages is like a dictatorship, or maybe one is bureaucracy in support of the town. Same with commerce and defense. You can have different things for those for each location. And the last was organizations, and I basically kept it the same while adding, again, a flavor that I think is very underused, even in experienced DM's campaigns. So Mikellar has several temples. And I put in brackets here a note that I would like the DM to have at least one temple for each player character cleric's chosen domain. And this is a way for the cleric player to basically have their own haven, right? Somewhere with NPCs they can talk to, something that they can play up their connection to their god.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be at least one shrine as well for each PC Druid circle. Because if I had my druthers and I were running this, Druids do not worship gods. They worship nature. They do not build temples, they build shrines. So you would have a shrine to the moon, or a shrine to the land. And each land shrine would be specific to a different type of land, basically.
Oh, yeah, because if you go that route, you can choose coast, mountain, grasslands, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, so for example, we've put Mikellar around the mountains in Lukuna. I'm not sure what region has the mountain, but I basically decided that by random die roll too. And so it would make sense that there, even if no PC Druid chooses land, mountain, circle, you could have a shrine there for it, if you so wanted, a shrine to the mountain. And it wouldn't be to the mountain god, it would just be, a druid would be keeping the shrine up, and it would be like praying to the force of nature. And
yeah, to pray, meditate, commune, be one, maybe with the spirit of the mountain, kind of a thing.
yeah. Whereas the cleric would be to the specific deity. And I was not sure when I was typing this out what kind of pantheon Mesotopia had, which is why I left it up to the domain.
Yes.
But if specific deities are a thing, which I then decided they were for the dungeon, you could also include this for each player character who chooses the Acolyte background. That there could be a temple for them as well, basically, for their religious connection, to help them with their background feature. Because Acolytes get a special feature that really only works if there's a temple that shares where the Acolyte trained, right?
And as a DM, if you wanted, if there is a predominant religion or two that are in the area, it might not be uncommon to just have a non-denominational shrine or temple itself. So you have like the Cathedral of Major Religion A, then you have like the mega church of Religion B, and then for anyone else who passes through town, probably in like a port town or along a major highway, there might just be a non-denominational space for general prayer, or you can bring your own, your own holy symbols and whatnot, and get have an alcove that you can pray to your specific god there.
Yeah.
As a bit of a catch-all.
Yeah. that would definitely work. Or you could do a thing where, like in ancient civilizations in our world, you could have one temple that is used to pray to multiple deities.
Mm-hmm.
I think in one of my streams I described it as being kind of like a Roman Catholic church where there are different chapels within a cathedral for the different saints that you would pray in front of for different different things. You could do the same in D&D, have one giant building and within it smaller temples, kind of thing. All right, so that's the first town hub. My initial thought was to have 3 villages as well, and I did get to it, but between the 3 villages would be sort of like a wilderness adventure to sort of simulate traveling through Lukuna. But yeah, that didn't show up for the stream, unfortunately. We
Oh
can go
no,
into
that's
it
fine because
later,
this is going to be this is a basic rundown of things to consider and where you can find those resources. And I think you've done a very good job of that.
yes, so now the real meat and potatoes is the dungeon 1. So everything up to here can be run regardless of actually what level the characters are, what dungeons they've completed. Like McKellar will be a thing in Lukuna unless, something wipes it off the map. But all of this stuff...
And hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah, all of this stuff is true regardless. So Dungeon 1 is now the beginning of our actual adventure.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what then. If you don't mind, I'd like to take like a 5-minute break, just for us to get up and stretch, get something to drink, because we've been going for about an hour and, well, adjusted for the 15-minute intro time, we've been going for about an hour and a half. Can we take a 5-minute break and come back and we'll get your dungeon?
Yes, definitely. I'm very long-winded.
No, it's fine. I think you're doing a great job, and if any of you out there who have come along for the raid, or if you've been here before then, you're always welcome to lurk. You are always welcome to do that. If you have questions, you can ask them, whether it's related to what you see on screen or not. If you've been playing D&D for 10 years, 20 years or more, or if you've only ever just heard of it and maybe you don't feel sure, we're here to help in that instance. We can help you clear writer's block. We can throw out new ideas. In fact, this whole guest DM with Ivellos here, this is a fun challenge for me as the host of the channel, because Ivellos runs his campaigns in a different fashion, using a different methodology, and I wanted to make sure that I was being fair to you all in the audience, and to showcase other ways of thinking, because all roads are going to lead to Rome. If you're playing through Ivelos's campaign here, the entire point, just as it would be with my campaign, is you're having fun, you're exploring, you're solving puzzles, you're fighting monsters, and you're gonna be someone in Lukuna by the end of it. Okay, anyway, let's get up and take 5. I'm not gonna be too long. I made sure, Ivellos, that, I have a couple things already ready, like I have some drinks and whatnot, but I do have to get up and just walk around for a minute. Let's come back in 5, and then Ivellos is going to take us... we've done world building, right? He discussed how he fleshed out Lukuna, and then he went into a major city, and we talked about NPCs. Now we're going to go into the dungeon construction process as a part of this Lukuna-based campaign. All right, so I'm going to hit short rest, and I'm going to mute my mic as well, and we'll come back in about 5 minutes or so.
Okay. There's actually, I wonder if I'm still on. Oh, yes, I can hear myself. Okay. So, Fan Coaster, there is actually more to world building than I've gone through, that I haven't done on stream, because a lot of the basic world building had already been done before I showed up. Was I nervous coming on stream? Yes. Yes. I actually have anxiety issues about multiple stuff. But yeah. So yeah, if anyone has questions about stuff they heard or didn't hear or want to know, you can ask me now that Maddie's not here before we go into the dungeon. Yeah. Oh. Oh.